is, do you feel lovable? And of course, the question answers itself, because if you don't feel lovable, we're not going to be able to experience love well. We're not going to be able to own it, to accept it. But let's see what my friend Rumi has to say about this. Rumi and I both started practicing around the same time. Um, your task is not to seek love, but merely to find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Well, I guess that's my job to explain what the barriers are, how to find them, and how to remove them. And I'm told that if I can do this in 18 minutes, I'll save 18% of my car insurance. Maybe not. Maybe not. Let me ask you a question. How many people in the audience here are quadriplegics north of 60 years old? Nobody. So I want to tell you what that experience is for me. That nobody in this room has lived a body like mine, has experienced a life like mine, knows what it's like inside my skin. You've all felt that. Alone, distressed. Now, let me ask you a different question. How many people in this room feel anxiety, insecurity, second guess ourselves, have fear of being rejected, of being judged, worse, judge ourselves? When you make a mistake, you kick your butt around the block for a little bit. Now I feel I'm with kindred spirits. I feel like we're all together here. What's the difference? The first question was a label. The second question was I was sharing my humanity. And I was fortunate enough that you shared yours. It's a visceral sensation when that happens. Something happens in our body. We relax a bit. But I want to show you my little buddy here. He doesn't worry about that. He doesn't worry. My baby picture. I wish. He doesn't worry about this stuff. They're just filled with love. You look at that picture and your heart opens. You feel happy. You feel love. He feels love in every moment of every day. He feels awe in the ordinary. We all used to do that. So where does it go? What happens in that transition from that 5-year-old who's filled with love to where we are now, the neurotic, insecure mess that we all are? Think back over the trajectory of your life. There's a certain point where you focused more on what you did, what you achieved, what you produced, where you valued yourself based on your strength and your accomplishments. You began to see yourself as performance beings rather than the spiritual one of my little friend. And what do we do with those tender hearts? What do we do with the anxiety, the vulnerability, the insecurity that we all talked about? That goes underground. We become ashamed of who we are at core. Vulnerable humans with tender hearts. We hide that. We hide that from each other, And we hide that from ourselves. We turn our backs on the part of ourselves that we feel are weak or not worthy. But what we do is we wind up turning our backs on our own humanity. I learned these lessons well. When I was in elementary school, I had a learning disability. That was before we knew about learning disabilities. So I was a failure, and I didn't know why. Nobody knew why. I didn't think I was lazy. I didn't think I was dumb, but I wasn't sure. So I lied. I lied about my grades to my friends, to my best friends. I became even more insecure. I lived my life feeling the same way I felt when I asked that first question in here, feeling different from everyone else. When I got into seventh grade, I had a teacher who I idolized. He was the first adult that really believed in me. He taught me about psychology. That's when I decided to be a psychologist, at 12 years old. I would have followed this man anywhere. Unfortunately, I did. At his request, I followed him to his house one day after school. And then I followed him to his bedroom. More shame, more to hide, more to bury inside, more feeling different and alone in this world. And yet I believed that if only I'd be okay, if only I got my doctorate, if only I was successful as a professional, if only I was able to buy a home for my wife and children. I got all these things. There was still something missing. And then on December 20th, 1979, I kissed my wife and two beautiful little girls goodbye, walked across the frozen lawn of my house, got into my car, and those would be the last steps I would ever take. And when I came to, days later, I realized there was no hope for me. I'd never be like everybody else. I'd never fit in. I'd never be good enough. How could I be lovable? How could I be worthy? I was too broken, too dependent, too needy, too crippled to ever be lovable. I didn't wonder that. I knew it. So, how do we get from feeling that worthless and that unlovable to having a life filled with gratitude and love? I want to suggest to you that the story of my life is different than yours, but the experience of my life is no different. You have felt terror, vulnerability, fear, maybe worthlessness, despair. We're all in this together. The stories change. The textures change. How we get around in this world changes, whether it's on wheelchairs or feet. The color of our skin changes. Where we grew up changes. But our humanity, we're in it together. We're in it together. One of the things I've learned about this business of love is that the hunger to be known exceeds the hunger to be loved. We need to be known for who we are. or else we can't feel loved. How many of us have said to ourselves, they say they love me, but if they only knew. We can't experience love unless we feel known for who we are. But how does that happen? It's an act of courage. We have to do what's counterintuitive. Brene Brown talks about courage, and the root of that, C-U-R, which means heart. Courage is to speak your truth from your heart, who you are. A loving, insecure, needy, scared, vulnerable person with a history, with a future, who has visited heaven and hell in your lifetime. That's who you are. That's who we are. Do we have the courage to share who we really are with those we love? You see, without vulnerability, there's no intimacy. Without intimacy, there's no safety, and without safety, we have nothing. There can be no love. Nothing grows without safety. Have the courage to lead with your chin, to enter a relationship with an open, tender heart, the same one my younger brother has. He's not upstaging me, is he? I learned something else about love. When I was in the hospital, filled with despair, and all I wanted to do was close my eyes and not wake up, a nurse came up to me and asked if she could talk to me. And she was herself filled with despair, had a significant loss in her life. And as I listened to her, her heart opened up, and I knew what she was feeling because I was feeling it. And we connected at that level of mutual vulnerability. And I cared deeply for this vulnerable human who suffered. I began to feel love for this woman who uttered 3 words to me. Please help me. I heard those words and I felt love for her. I hear those words from patients in my office, and I begin to feel love for them. I feel love not just for my family. I feel love for all vulnerable humans. You see, St. John of the Cross said, where there is no love, put love, and you will find love. It's true biologically. Love is an experience. It's not a state of being. Love, the more you love, the more you will have love in your life. But there's one other lesson I want to share with you. In my 35 years, I've come close to death many times. Most recently, 6 months ago, when I have felt the tepid breeze of death on my cheek. Sartre says, we should live with death on our shoulder. Well, Gottlieb says, you should live with life on your other shoulder. And in between is that everyday vitality, that every moment vitality. I don't know if I'm going to see the next season. I don't know if this is my last day on earth. I don't know. And that's not an abstraction. I've come too close too many times to make that theoretically. And as I feel the fragility of my life. I feel so deeply grateful, so loving for the life I have, so loving that I have this life, so loving that I have all the people in my life who have given me the honor of allowing me to love them. So grateful for every moment I'm able to breathe, for every moment, for every experience I have. So grateful for this experience right now. I feel great love for sharing my vulnerability with you and having you share yours with me. At this very moment, I feel great love for you, for this, and I wish the same for you. Thank you.